There are animals that are so well known, almost anyone in the world could name them, even if they've never seen one. But in some cases, what we think is actually one species turns out to be several. In this video, we're looking at animals most of us know well, and checking out how many species of those animals actually exist. I want to thank everyone who commented on my community post earlier this week to give me more ideas of what to include in this video. For the sake of clarity, I tried to let you know what family, subfamily, genus, or genera of animal I was including for each, and I avoided animals that have extremely complex or debated divisions, like orcas and wolves. Before I reveal how many species there are for each of these, try making a guess. I hope that some of these surprise you. We'll start out with some of my favorite animals, birds. And why not start with one of the most abundant birds in the world, chickens. The wild type of the domestic chicken is believed to have been one of the species of jungle fowl. But do you know how many species there are? There are 4 species of jungle fowl, all originating from South and Southeast Asia. The red jungle fowl is believed to be the species that domestic chickens originally came from. It ranges through much of South and Southeast Asia, including some of the islands of Indonesia and the Philippines. The gray jungle fowl is native primarily to India. The green jungle fowl is mostly found in Indonesia on islands like Java and Bali. And the Ceylon jungle fowl is found exclusively in Sri Lanka. This is another extremely well-known type of bird. The term for the birds in general is peafowl, while males are called peacocks and females are called peahens. While one of the species is extremely well known, the others are also very beautiful. There are 6 species in the tribe Pavonini, with 3 being called peafowl and 3 being species of Argus. All 6 species have beautiful feathers. The Indian peafowl is native to South Asia, though several countries have feral populations today, including the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. The only other species in the genus Pavo is the green peafowl, and they're found in Southeast Asia. The other 4 species include the Congo peafowl, found exclusively in the central Congolian lowland forests, and the 3 Argus species, all 3 of which are found in Southeast Asia. The Atlantic puffin is an extremely well-known species of seabird. If you Google puffin, practically every image that comes up will be of the Atlantic puffin. But it turns out there are actually 4 species of puffin. While the Atlantic puffin is of course found in the North Atlantic, the other 3 species are found in the North Pacific. While the rhinoceros auklet doesn't carry the name puffin and is in a different genus, it's most closely related to the other puffin species, and it used to be called the hornbilled puffin or unicorn puffin. Another domestic species of bird known around the world is the turkey, but it turns out there are actually 2 species in the genus Meleagris. The well-known wild turkey lives across much of temperate North America. Its beautiful cousin, the ocellated turkey, is found only in the tropical forests of the Yucatan Peninsula. Unlike the wild turkey, the ocellated turkey is quite uncommon. The IUCN lists it as near threatened, but the Mexican government considers it to be in danger of extinction. Toucans are more confusing than you may think. People associate toucans with jungles around the world. In the movie George of the Jungle, he was said to have grown up in Africa, yet he had a toucan as a pet. The truth is, however, that all toucan species live in the New World, that is, North and South America, and they aren't just one species. Toucans are comprised of 43 known species. These include the beautiful green toucanettes, the red, yellow, and black aracaris, the dichromatic toucanettes, each with a yellow band near the eye, the blue-gray mountain toucans, and of course, the most famous larger species of toucan that are often used in television and movies. Meanwhile, over in Africa and Asia live the similar-looking hornbills. Do you think there are more or less species of hornbills than there are toucans? Well, there are more, with 62 species spread across 2 continents. About 27 of those are found in Africa, and the rest are found in Asia. The most famous hornbill in the world is probably Zazu from The Lion King, which was based off of the African red-billed hornbill, which is found primarily in the southern parts of Africa. Another group of brightly colored birds are parrots, and some of the most popular parrots are the macaws. Macaws aren't a single grouping of parrots, rather a variety of genera from the Arini tribe that are similar in that they have thick bills, long tails, and often an exposed patch of skin around the eyes and sometimes onto the cheeks. Macaws aren't just 1 or 2 species, but 17. There are also several recently extinct species, or disputed species from the Caribbean. If you want to watch a video about disputed species of parrot, check out the one I made on them a few months ago. Of the 17 extant species of macaw, most of them are in the Ara genus, which is comprised of many of the most famous species of macaw in the world. All macaw species are found only in the Americas. The fully blue macaw species are mostly found in the dry tropical forests of Brazil and Argentina, and are some of the rarest parrots in the world. Lear's macaw is endangered. Spix's macaw is extinct in the wild, and the glaucous macaw is listed as critically endangered, though no birds have been sighted since the 1980s, and they're feared to have already gone extinct. Moving from some of the most colorful birds to some of the least colorful birds, we have the crows. The genus Corvus contains both crows and ravens, with the only real difference between the two being their size. You may be surprised to know that there are 50 species of crow around the world, and they can be very difficult to distinguish between. They're basically all shades of black, white, and gray, with some having a glossy blue, green, or purple sheen. While they may not be considered beautiful by many, they're some of the most intelligent animals in the world, and they play a crucial role in the ecosystems that they inhabit. If you watched my video from last week where I talked about a flamingo that made it to Canada, you may already know the answer to this. How many different species of flamingo are there? There are 6 species. 2 found in Africa, Europe, and Asia, and 4 found in the Americas. Of the 6 species, the greater flamingo is the most widespread. Meanwhile, the lesser flamingo is the most numerous species, with an estimated global population of 3.2 million birds. 2 of the American species are limited to high-altitude montane lakes, the Andean and James's flamingos. The Andean flamingo is also the rarest, with fewer than 40,000 birds left in the wild. Another bird associated with water is the swan. The most well-known species is the mute swan, which is native to Eurasia. They appear in European folklore and have been spread around the world because of their beauty. But it isn't the only species. There are actually 6 species of swan. Along with the mute swan, the whooper swan and tundra swan can also be found in Eurasia. Meanwhile, in North America, both the tundra swan and trumpeter swan are native species. But the most unique species are found in the southern hemisphere. The black swan is native only to Australia, though they have been introduced to several other countries. And in the southernmost parts of South America lives the black-necked swan. To wrap up the section on birds, we'll look at a few species of ratites, starting with the most famous ratite in the world, the ostrich. It may surprise you to know that ostriches are not just one single species. There are in fact two separate species, both found in Africa. The common ostrich is the most widespread, being found in much of the southern part of the continent, as well as the Horn of Africa and through the Sahel region of the north. It once even spread into the Middle East, though this subspecies has since gone extinct. Meanwhile, the Somali ostrich, with its blue neck and legs, is only found in the Horn of Africa, where it's considered vulnerable to extinction. Moving over to Oceania, we have the cassowary. After the two species of ostrich, the cassowary is considered the next largest species of extant bird, except that it isn't one species. It's actually three, and only two of them are exceptionally large. The southern cassowary is the third largest species of bird on Earth, and is found in northeastern Australia and the island of New Guinea. Only slightly smaller, and with much more yellow on the throat, the northern cassowary is found on the north end of New Guinea. After these two cassowaries, the emu comes next in size, then the emperor penguin, and then the greater rhea. The dwarf cassowary, also found on New Guinea, is the 8th largest bird in the world, being less than half the weight of the two larger species. And the last bird on this list is New Zealand's most famous bird, the kiwi. They are the smallest ratites in the world, and they're not just one species, but 5 separate species. On the North Island, one can find the North Island brown kiwi, as well as a few tiny populations of the little spotted kiwi. On the South Island lives the great spotted kiwi, the southern brown kiwi, and the okarito kiwi. The little spotted kiwi almost went extinct a century ago, and it now survives mostly on small, predator-free islands off the coast of both the North and South Islands. Moving on to mammals, let's begin with some of the most iconic African species. Giraffes are the tallest animals in the world, and if you thought it was a single species, no one would blame you. Until only a few years ago, they were classified as one species. But based on the most recent genetic research, giraffes are actually 4 distinct species, with as many as 9 subspecies. For now, the 4 species are the reticulated giraffe, the northern giraffe, the Maasai giraffe, and the southern giraffe. Each can be distinguished morphologically by their coat patterns. But the taxonomy on giraffes isn't settled yet. The IUCN still only recognizes a single species, and there are other proposed divisions for giraffes, which includes a model that would divide them into 8 separate species. Next is the famous zebra. These wild horses are instantly recognizable thanks to their distinct black and white patterning. But zebras are not a single species. There are actually 3 species of zebra, each with slightly different fur patterns. The plain zebra is the most widespread of the 3 species. They have broad stripes with faint, thinner stripes that appear between the broader ones. Their stripes also generally extend onto their bellies. Grevy's zebra is endangered and can only be found in parts of Kenya and Ethiopia. They have more numerous, thin stripes with distinct white marks on their bellies and rumps. The mountain zebra is found mostly in Namibia and South Africa, and is assessed as vulnerable to extinction. They are the smallest of the 3 species, and they have uniform, broad stripes that do not extend onto their bellies. Hippopotamus species used to be more diverse, with all of the known island species having been wiped out. But there still exists more than one species in Africa today. There are in fact 2 species of hippo that remain extant, with one being much smaller than the other. The common hippopotamus can be found in waterways throughout Central and Southern Africa. Their population is stable, though it is listed as vulnerable. If you watched my video from last week, you also know that there's a small population of feral hippos surviving in Colombia. The other species is the pygmy hippo, which is only found in the West African countries of Ivory Coast, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. There are at most 2,500 surviving in the wild, and the species is at risk of extinction. The birth of a pygmy hippo in Thailand earlier this year became an internet sensation. Mu Dang is particularly playful and energetic, making her popular with people from around the world. The largest land animal in the world is the elephant. Most of us know that there are African and Asian varieties, but did you know that there is a third recognized species? For centuries, only 2 species were recognized, but going back as far as 1900, some scientists felt that a group of elephants that lived in the jungles of Western Africa could in fact be a separate species. In 2010, genetic testing confirmed this theory, and the African forest elephant was named as a distinct species. The most obvious difference between the 2 African species is that the African forest elephant is significantly smaller and has tusks that point straight down, allowing for easier navigation through the forests in which they live. The Asian elephant is split into 3 subspecies and is easily distinguished from the 2 African species. Their proportionately larger heads with much smaller ears are a dead giveaway. Rhinos are another large herbivore closely associated with Africa, but what many don't realize is that there are actually more species of rhino outside of Africa than in it. In total, there are 5 species of rhinoceros, with 2 being found in Africa and the other 3 in South and Southeast Asia. Africa is home to the white rhinoceros and the black rhinoceros. The white rhinoceros is divided into 2 subspecies. The southern white rhino is near threatened, while the northern white rhino is down to only 2 females left. The black rhinoceros is divided into 7 or 8 subspecies, with 3 that have already gone extinct: the southern black rhino, the northeastern black rhino, and the western black rhino. Meanwhile, in Asia, the greater rhinoceros has been increasing in numbers thanks to amazing conservation programs across its range, especially in India. The other 2 rhino species aren't so lucky. The Javan rhino has fewer than 80 left in the world, while the Sumatran rhino is down to only about 30 mature individuals. Both will likely go extinct this century unless much more is done to protect the species and the environments that they rely on. Another animal made popular through the Disney cartoon The Lion King, hyenas are known for their laugh-like vocalizations. But this isn't one species of animal. There are actually 4 species of hyena. The most famous is the spotted hyena, found through much of Africa. The aardwolf, also known as the civet hyena, is also found in Africa, both in the south and in the Horn. Striped hyenas range further north and can be found in the drier parts of North Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. And the brown hyena is the rarest of the 4 species. It's found in southwestern Africa and is estimated to only have between 4,000 and 10,000 individuals remaining in the wild. Next, we have a couple of species of primate. The largest primate in the world is the gorilla. Gorillas are actually 2 species. They're divided geographically, with the western and eastern species being found in those respective parts of Central Africa. They remain separated by the Congo River basin. Both species have 2 subspecies, and both are critically endangered. Over in Asia, The largest species of primate is the orangutan. From the Malay and Indonesian words orang, meaning person, and utan, meaning forest, their name literally means forest person. For a long time, they were considered to only be one species. But in 1996, they were split into two, and in 2017, a third species was recognized. The Bornean orangutan lives only on the island of Borneo. It's critically endangered, with fewer than 50,000 surviving in the wild. The Sumatran orangutan lives only on the Indonesian island of Sumatra and is also critically endangered, with as few as 14,000 left in the wild. But the Tapanuli orangutan, which was the most recent to be recognized as a separate species, is the rarest, with only 800 left in the world. Next, we have bears. Most people realize that there are several species of bears. Brown, black, polar, and panda are all pretty well known. But bear diversity is more impressive than most people realize. There are 8 species of bear found around the world. The brown bear is found in both Eurasia and North America, where it's called a grizzly. American black bears are a common sight in some parts of North America. Where I live, they're regularly seen walking through some neighborhoods. This is also the species that inspired Winnie the Pooh. Polar bears are found throughout the Arctic, and pandas inhabit bamboo forests in central China. The lesser-known bear species are mostly tropical. The Asiatic black bear can be found through parts of the Middle East, the Himalayan mountains, as well as large parts of East and Southeast Asia. The sloth bear lives only in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and this is the species that inspired Baloo from the Jungle Book. Spectacled bears are the only species of bear found in South America, where they mainly live high in the Andes Mountains. Finally, the sun bear lives exclusively in Southeast Asia, and it may be the rarest bear species in the world. Their population is hard to estimate, with some guessing there may be as many as 10,000 left, but estimates are as low as 1,000, which would make them even rarer than pandas. Bison have been covered a lot on this channel recently. Of course, North America is known for the large herds of bison that used to roam there, but they aren't exclusive to North America. There are 2 recognized species of bison in the world. The American and the European bison are very similar looking, with the American bison appearing to be more hunched over with a larger head. The European bison used to have 3 subspecies. 2 of those subspecies have gone extinct, the Carpathian and the Caucasian bison. There are only about 3,500 in the wild today, and a further 4,000 in captivity. Meanwhile, the American bison has 2 subspecies, the plains bison and the wood bison. They're doing much better, with about 30,000 living in the wild, and over 350,000 living in captivity. Another iconic American species is the beaver. These semi-aquatic rodents are famous for cutting down trees to build their dams, and it was hunting for beaver fur that led to colonial expansion across North America. But there are actually 2 species of beaver. The North American beaver has rebounded from the days of fur hunting, and currently number in the millions. But the lesser-known Eurasian beaver hasn't done quite as well. There are a little over 1 million Eurasian beavers in the wild today, mostly in Eastern and Northern Europe, but they're just starting to make a comeback in countries that haven't seen them in a long time. Most recently, they've been making the news for popping up in the UK, both through planned and illegal reintroductions. In the southern parts of the US and across Mexico, the armadillo is famous for its ability to protect itself by rolling into a ball. But there are far more armadillo species than you may realize. In fact, There are 21 recognized species of armadillo. These range in size from the massive giant armadillo down to the tiny pink fairy armadillo. There's even one species that's really hairy. The hairy long-nosed armadillo looks more similar to a large fluffy rat than to the other species of armadillo. The 21 species can be found across the Americas, from Canada to parts of the Caribbean, all the way down to Chile. Manatees are large aquatic mammals known to inhabit both fresh and saltwater habitats. The most famous manatees are those of southern Florida, but there are actually 3 species of manatee. The West Indian manatee is the most widespread, being found from the southern US throughout the Caribbean, eastern Central America, and northern South America. But South America is home to another species of manatee, the Amazonian manatee. Found throughout the Amazon River system and many of its tributaries, the Amazonian manatee is smaller than the West Indian manatee and is the only species that lives exclusively in fresh water. Meanwhile, Africa has a single species, the West African manatee. All 3 species look almost identical and are mainly differentiated by small differences in their skeletal structures, their genetics, and their range. There is another similar species in the order Sirenia, the dugong. Dugongs have crescent-shaped tails rather than rounded tails like manatees, and they live primarily in salt water, mostly in the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific. Next, we have a common household pet, the hamster. These cute little rodents originate in Europe and Asia, but they're more diverse than you may think. There are 19 species of hamster, spread out between 8 genera. The Syrian species is the most commonly kept as a pet, but the 3 species of dwarf hamster are also commonly kept. The rarest species of hamster is the European hamster, which has declined so much over the past few years that it went from being considered least concern in 2007 to critically endangered in 2023. To finish up the mammals, we're going to look at some Australian species, starting with kangaroos. Kangaroos are iconic symbols of Down Under, but there are many more species than you may think that carry the name kangaroo. For this section, I'm including 3 genera of marsupials that we call kangaroos in English. And within those 3 genera, there are actually 18 species of kangaroo. 4 of them are species that we more traditionally associate with kangaroos. These 4 species are found across much of the Australian mainland and Tasmania. The red kangaroo is the largest and most widespread. The eastern grey kangaroo is found up and down the eastern third of the country, as well as in Tasmania, while the western grey kangaroo mostly lives along the southern part of the mainland. The Antilopine kangaroo has the smallest range, only being found in the northernmost parts of Australia. The other 14 species of kangaroo are all in the genus Dendrolagus and are known as tree kangaroos. They're the only true arboreal macropods, with 2 species being found in northeastern Australia and the rest only living on the island of New Guinea. One of these species, the Wandawoid tree kangaroo, is perhaps the most interesting, having been described in 1913 and then not being seen again until a single confirmed sighting over a century later in 2018. Like kangaroos, wallabies are not a single genera and are not clearly defined. Many smaller species of macropod are referred to as wallabies. In fact, there are 33 species that carry the name wallaby in their common names. These include the wallabies that most likely come to mind when you hear the word wallaby, from the genus Noda macropus. but it also includes the rock wallabies, swamp wallaby, hair wallabies, nail-tail wallabies, and the quokka, which is sometimes called the short-tailed scrub wallaby. Quokkas are famous because they appear to be smiling. As such, they're a popular animal to snap a picture with while on vacation in southwestern Australia. Next, we have the wombats. These short, muscular marsupials are found mostly along the southern and eastern coasts of Australia. And most people don't realize that there are actually 3 species of them. The common wombat is the most well known and lives in the southeastern part of the country, including Tasmania. There are an estimated 75,000 surviving in the wild. The southern hairy-nosed wombat has a similar population and is found along the south-central coast. And by far the rarest is the northern hairy-nosed wombat. They're restricted to a tiny range in Queensland, and their population sits at no more than 400 left in the world. The last mammal for this video is the echidna. Some of you may not know what an echidna is, but it's a very special animal, being one of only 2 types of mammal in the world that lays eggs, with the other being the platypus. While the platypus is a single species, echidnas are actually 4 different species. While Australia is home to the short-beaked echidna, New Guinea is home to all 4 species, 3 of which are found only there and nowhere else. The eastern long-beaked echidna is the most common of the 3, being listed as vulnerable. Meanwhile, the western long-beaked echidna is listed as critically endangered. But the rarest of them all is Sir David's long-beaked echidna. Named after the famous natural historian Sir David Attenborough, this species was described in 1998 off of a specimen that had been collected in 1961. While there was evidence that the species was still out there, no confirmed sighting of Sir David's long-beaked echidna came to light until the end of 2023, when it was finally captured on film for the first time ever. The last few species in this video are mostly reptiles and fish. First, we have the highly requested hammerhead shark. These fish are famous for their distinctive head shape, but of course, they aren't one single species, rather 10. Hammerhead sharks inhabit coastal waters globally. In some places, like in the Galapagos of Ecuador, they can appear in huge numbers. Sadly, shark fins are considered a delicacy in several countries in Asia. As a result, shark populations globally are under serious threat. Of the 10 known species, 1 is vulnerable to extinction, 2 are endangered, and 5 are critically endangered. 1 hasn't been assessed, and the other is data deficient. All of their populations are decreasing. Perhaps the most famous type of shark in the world is the great white shark. But do you know how many species fall into the genus Carcharodon? Well, it's only 1. The great white shark is in fact the only surviving species in its genus. But from the fossil record, we know of 7 other extinct species, all of which went extinct millions of years ago. Megalodon was a close relative of the great white shark, but it was in a separate genus, Otodus. Moving on to some reptiles, we have the famous Anaconda. Again, if you watch my videos, you already know that there is more than 1 species of anaconda, as I recently covered a newly described species based on genetic research. There are actually 5 species of anaconda. All 5 of these species live in the Amazon rainforest. The newest anaconda is the northern green anaconda. They were split from the rest of the green anacondas earlier this year thanks to some morphological differences that made scientists suspicious. Genetic testing has finally confirmed their suspicions. The Bolivian anaconda was also described this century, reaching species status in 2002. Next, we have the alligator. Alligators are differentiated from crocodiles in a few ways, with the most notable being that they have wider, rounder snouts, and only their top teeth are visible when their mouths are closed. Perhaps you're familiar with the alligators that live in the American Southeast. But there are in fact two species of alligator. One is of course the huge American alligator, but interestingly, the only other species in the alligator genus is found on the other side of the world in southeastern China. The two species look very similar, except for one thing: their size. While the American alligator can reach lengths of up to 4.6 meters, the Chinese alligator doesn't exceed 2.1 meters. Sadly, they're critically endangered and only about 150 survive in the wild. Another highly requested animal was the king cobra. While there are other species of cobra, what you may not know is that the king cobra has been shown to be more than one species. It is now considered 4 distinct species. While the debate has been going on for a few years, the research was accepted within the last few weeks, and the 4 king cobras now each have their own scientific name. The Western Ghats king cobra lives in southwestern India. The northern king cobra is found in eastern India and much of southern China and the mainland of Southeast Asia. The Sunda king cobra lives on the Malay Peninsula, as well as Borneo, Sumatra, Java, and Sulawesi. And the Luzon king cobra is found in the northern parts of the Philippines. And the last animal on our list, because so many of you brought it up, is the mosquito. I avoided insects on this list because I wanted to be able to show every species of any given animal on the screen, and most genera of insects have thousands of known species. But you wanted the mosquito, so here it is. How many species of mosquito do you think there are? Well, there are over 3,600 of them. Mosquitoes are a family of flies, and like most insects, they have a huge array of diversity. About 20% of mosquito species drink blood, which is only roughly 720 species. And of those 720, only about 90 of them carry diseases that are threatening to humans. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the variety of species out there. Did you learn anything new? And what do you think I missed? Let me know in the comments. I need to say a special thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to make a video like this every week. If you want to join us on Patreon, hit the link in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.